Hey guys, this is Dark Skeleton, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Guilty Gear Arxarid. I got the chance to finally play it yesterday when my friend Zeppi brought it over to my house. That was Christmas Eve. We played for about bloody 9 hours, was it? So in Guilty Gear, if you don't already know, it's a fighting game, same makers as BlazBlue, that's Arc System Works. And I've been a big fan of both of these games in the company for several years now, really. I'd say going on 4 or 5 since I played X Reload, I believe. When it comes to fighting games that are anime-themed, BlazBlue and Guilty Gear definitely take the cake. There are actually a lot of them out there. Others that are pretty good, but maybe a little bit less well-known, like Melty Blood and Skullgirls. And then others that, in my opinion, are kind of iffy, like Kingdom Heart and the Touhou fighting game. Now, as for Guilty Gear, what makes Guilty Gear so great as a game series? Well, for one thing, I would have to say the art assets and the character design are actually very unique. BlazBlue has some of that, though I think BlazBlue is kind of a little bit more generic anime, whereas Guilty Gear, they kind of go all out with making it kind of rebellious, giving it a somewhat dystopic and sinning kind of theme. And then when you mix that in with the heavy rock / metal soundtracks from Daisuke Ishiwatari, you get a pretty sick, awesome game. Now, mechanically, is it the best fighting game of all time? I don't know about that, because, I'm not a bloody professional fighting game player. I will say it's a lot of fun to play, and there weren't too many problems I had with the actual system. It plays like an old-school Guilty Gear game, which in my opinion is good. I don't want them to change the formula. I like Guilty Gear for being Guilty Gear. So if you don't already know, in Guilty Gear, there's a lot of different special techniques that every character can do in addition to their normal character-specific special abilities. That includes things like Roman Cancels, which allows you to break out of a combo, stopping the animation early, and effectively being able to cheat your way into a combo that would be effectively impossible to do otherwise. That is actually pretty interesting, because it allows you to play with a lot of different attack combinations that you may have not otherwise thought of. And then they have things like Dead Man's Gambit, I believe it's called, where you pay half of your tension meter in order to immediately stop your opponent's attacks while you're blocking, counter them, and then break it into your own combo. Using your burst has always been another fun thing to do in the game, because if you burst, you basically get a glowy ring around you. If you're using it while you're being attacked, you get a blue burst, which immediately breaks yourself out of the combo, which basically means, hey, I don't like what's happening right now, get away from me, I want to reset this fight. And then the gold burst, which is actually the one I prefer, which you get a golden ring around you, obviously, and then if it hits your opponent, you get a full tension meter. You can only do it when you're not being attacked, so it's kind of like your opponent got way too aggressive, you knew what was coming, they were going to attack you, and then you just pop them with the gold burst, get a full tension meter. It's really satisfying and allows you to basically go ahead, do 2 supers immediately. Now, when I'm talking about supers, if it wasn't already obvious, I'm talking about the moves that take half of your tension meter. I believe they're actually called overdrives in Guilty Gear, and they do really awesome effects, take a huge amount of damage off your opponent's meter. And they actually added one mechanic into the game called Hellfire, I believe it's called, which, when you're low on HP and you do one of those overdrive moves, the damage it does, I don't know if it's double damage, but it's a huge increase on damage. That's actually one of the things I'm not sure how I feel about, because it's a comeback mechanic. If you're about to lose the game and you do a Hellfire super, then you have the potential to take out maybe half of your opponent's life, basically bring them in line with where you're at. It's good in the sense of giving you that feeling of never giving up, and also when an opponent is really winning, he still has to be on his toes, because right before he finishes you, if you catch him off guard with those Hellfire combos, he could easily screw himself over. It's not like Guilty Gear has never had comeback mechanics, though, because it has instant kill moves, and these instant kill moves, unlike other games like BlazBlue, you don't have to wait for certain conditions, you can just go into instant kill mode, which is very obviously telegraphed, and then if you're lucky enough to land it, well, you win the match. Or actually the round, rather. Now, I know pretty much every professional player is never going to actually let themselves get hit by such a telegraphed instant kill in the first place, and they may not actually like the comeback mechanics of Hellfire so much. But yeah, still, I have no idea about the competitive scene. I know some people take Guilty Gear and BlazBlue and these games very, very seriously, and they get really good at it. Good enough to kick my ass without even blinking their eyes. But I think just from considering the game from a fun-to-play aspect, just for the average player, mechanically it's just fine. At the end of the day, though, there's really only so much you can screw up with the 2D fighting game. I mean, they've had the formula down for quite a while. It's, okay, you have different characters, different special moves, they all have their own stage, their own soundtrack, and they play differently from each other, but then you give them the ability to block and do special blocks, and so on and so forth. I'd say that the real differentiator for Guilty Gear is the theme and the outlandishness that it gives to each character. For instance, Faust is absolutely absurd as a character. His mindset makes no logical sense, but he's hilarious, he's fun to play, and he's fun to watch. So as for the story for the game, it's kind of similar to the recent BlazBlue storylines, where you have a big bad guy who's basically going out and bringing this kind of doom destruction forces to the world, and it's up to the cast to actually go and stop them for reasons such and such, not wanting the world to be destroyed. That part's not so different than any other game. I'd say in terms of the art assets that were really portrayed during the storyline, though, I found it to be a little bit more cheery than other Guilty Gear games, so to speak. I always imagined that Guilty Gear was really this really dark world, and it is kind of dark, but it's kind of like a light darkness. Like, yes, things are pretty bad, you have assassins in the cast of characters, and there aren't really many good guys, or any, so to speak. There's quite a bit of people doing shit because they feel like it, and quite a few characters that probably belong in a psychiatric ward. And no, I'm not just talking about Faust, although he's definitely one of them. Now, if there was one thing that really disappointed me with the game so far, it's that on initial release at least, they only released, I think, about 12 or 13 characters, back when you had XX Reload and XX Accent Core, which was basically Reload with extra characters in different themes and different stages. You had, I think, about 22, 25 characters, and not only that, but in the XX series, you had EX modes for each character. So if you wanted to play a character differently, or have them have a different moveset that's based on their original, but actually plays very differently, then you could do that with EX modes. And Melty Blood is another game that does that very similar thing, and that's one of the things I really like about that fighting game. But in X Hard Sign, they only decided to add in about 13, 14 characters at release, which means a lot of the old ones that I was really a fan of, namely Dizzy, who happened to be my main from Guilty Gear, at least the XX series, is no longer seen in the game, and as far as I can tell, there's no initial plans to release her as DLC, though they are releasing DLC characters, and that's good. But there's no question that I'm extremely salty about Dizzy not being in the game. Johnny isn't in there either. And speaking of the additional DLC characters, they decided to release Leo Whitefang for $8. Now, I've noticed this about fighting games. I think back around Street Fighter IV and the original BlazBlue games, or really the modern ones too, they were releasing each character at about $5 each. But now they're moving up to $8, and I know there's something to be said about inflation. Money isn't worth the same amount that it was used to, for most currencies anyway. But still, $8 for one character. If you added in another 10 characters or something at that price, that would be another $80. Now, you can call it bitching, you can say that, well, if you don't want to pay it, you don't have to, but still, I think that, you know, that kind of money for DLC is a little bit on the high side. Though at the end of the day, Arc System Works is in the business of making money, so you can't really blame them for it. One more tiny gripe about the game is that I do wish that they had a couple more of the old school soundtracks remixed into the game. They did kind of mess with Kai's theme and gave it a very new feel. I think they actually changed Potemkin's theme. I recognize some of the beats there as well. But totally personal preference there. So all in all, for my first impressions of Guilty Gear X Hard Sign, it is a very true to the original series Guilty Gear game. I like it a lot from what I can tell, and I think it's definitely been a long time coming. It's been quite a while since there's been a new Guilty Gear game, and I'd say this one lives up to the hype. As far as fighting games go, I think Guilty Gear is right up there with as much fun and satisfaction as you can get out of a fighting game. The music's great, the gameplay's great, the art is great, and the characters are great. So I hope that they continue to support it, and that the time between this Guilty Gear game coming out and the next one is a lot shorter than the time it's been since Accent Core came out. So I've been Dark Skeleton, and if you do have a friend who has this game, I recommend you go over to his house and give it a shot. And just like always, it's a great experience to play a Guilty Gear game for basically anyone who's a fan of fighting games in general, I believe. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.